What is up? Welcome to the DFS Academy for Week 9. We have crossed the halfway point of the NFL regular season and certainly the fantasy season. And at the same time, it feels like an eternity and way too short. You may be out of the running in your home league. It's time to start facing some of those hard truths, but you can still win some money in DFS. Let's build some lineups for Week 9. What is up? Welcome to the DFS Academy, Club Fantasy's weekly DFS show. I am your host, Ryan Weiss. With me, as always, Austin Amendolia. Austin, how are you doing on this fine Thursday evening?
Pretty good, although it just occurred to me as you were doing the intro, it's week 9, and I haven't been paying attention to the fact that, I only have like 4 weeks left to be ready for the fantasy playoffs. So, I'm glad you gave that reminder. There's a lot going on.
There you go. I'm glad I gave that reminder. I'm glad I gave that reminder too, but I have to give you a behind the scenes thing. Okay. My eyes wander while I'm doing intros, and I saw you make a face, and I promise you, I'm like, oh my God, is it not week 9? Like, could you imagine if I did an entire intro talking about very week specific things and was just wrong? And so there's a little bit of how that intro went for me and you in separate phases.
Yeah, no, it was just me occurring to me like, oh yeah, it's week 9.
Yeah, that happens sometimes. All right, folks, we cover the DFS main slate on this show. We do it every single week. At the top of the show, let me remind you, if you like this content, listen to the whole show. If you like it, hit the like button. If you want to hear it again, hit the subscribe button. If you happen to be listening on Apple or Spotify, hit that follow button. And we don't just talk DFS. You can actually play with us as well. You will find links in the description of this video and on any DFS articles you find on our website. You can join contests that we have going on both DraftKings and FanDuel. $2 contest, very nice group of people. We're just trying to help you guys build your bankroll a little bit, have a little bit of fun. And then we also have a Discord. Austin, tell them a little bit about it.
Yeah, you can join our listener Discord. It is free to enter. The link to join that is in the show description. You can come talk DFS with us, post your lineups, post your wins. If you post your wins, we'll talk about them on the show. Yeah. Ask us player questions. Like, we're really active in it. If you're playing those showdown slates, we'll talk about those as well. So join that Discord. We'll talk to you and help you set your lineups every week.
Yeah, and we do the Thursday showdown on the in the DraftKings group as well. So while we're recording the show, we have a showdown slate going on right now. As I mentioned, this show covers the main slate, and we start by taking a look at last week's main slate. We focus a little bit on cash, a little bit on GPP, but we start the show with last week's Millie making lineup. They scored 230.66 points. That's basically kind of average of what the Millie making team has been dropping. Austin, this struck me as a very strange lineup. Let me read it off here. Tua Tagovailoa, James Cook, Breece Hall, Michael Pittman, Jalen Waddle, Xavier Hutchinson. I just realized this person is an enormous fan of the AFC because George Kittle is the only NFC player in this entire lineup. They did get Jonathan Taylor into their flex and the Bills defense. Austin, you and I did not call a lot of these players last week. We spent a large portion of the show talking about why we love Jonathan Taylor and James Cook, who were the 2 highest scoring players on this lineup. So we did something right. We didn't really talk about the rest of these guys. And Austin, I started thinking about it. The goal to build a Tua Jalen Waddle lineup and not have Bijan Robinson on the other side, it's just a very strange lineup to me.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like any true lessons to be made of this, because like there are so many things that just like you have to get lucky on with this too. Like, I don't think there was any analytics that would have told you, bet on the Miami Dolphins right now. It's just like you thought, Mike McDaniel is going to get fired after this game. That was the prediction, right? And it
100%.
Just like ended up not going that way. It's one of those deals where I'm sure this person had multiple entries. And so it's just one of those things where it's like when you play a lot of entries, you can do some really weird stuff. And they got weird.
I bet they had this exact lineup with like a Bijan bring back. And then I was well, let me just turn Bijan into Jonathan Taylor. They probably just messed with that flex a little bit. I will say.
And that's probably how you then get down to Xavier Hutchinson, because to pay up for Jonathan Taylor,
to get Jonathan Taylor.
You had to save somewhere else.
I love that. The one lesson I didn't call it on this show, but I did call Buffalo my stream of the week defense. They did do one of my more favorite strategies, Austin, which is dominant running back playing with his defense. So
Yes. Yeah, no, that definitely works out a lot. Just that correlation, it tends to play out. And honestly, like going up against the Carolina Panthers, it wasn't too hard to imagine that happening.
exactly. And that's why I liked him a lot last week. And unfortunately, I didn't call the defense on this show, but I was in on the Buffalo defense. They just weren't cheap enough because they were playing the Carolina Panthers. Austin, talk to him a little bit about how you did in cash last week.
Yeah, cash was very interesting last week. So I did manage to be positive last week in head-to-heads, which is good. I was 53% last week, which brings me up to 44% on the season. So trying to get back to that 50% mark. Jonathan Taylor, once again, was like the key for me in cash because he went off, and because he got priced up even more, he was actually pretty lowly rostered in cash. He was only 19%. And so it really paid off that I stuck with him because Bijan Robinson straight up dudded last week. Like awful week for him. But in cash, it literally did not matter. He was 88% rostered in my double up contest. And it just is like the reminder about cash that it is, yes, about picking the right players, but it's not necessarily the right player isn't always the player that pops off. Yeah. Sometimes the right player is the player that everybody else is going to play. And you just say, you know what, whatever. We're just going to all cancel each other out. It's fine. And I'll figure it out from there.
I actually want to hit your last note here as well. You said you're running into a lot of 2 tight end builds yet again.
Yeah, I noticed looking at just rostership percentages, the two most high, there were 2 tight ends that were really highly rostered. Dallas Goedert was at like 40%, and I think it might have been Dalton Schultz. There was another tight end that was at like 60%.
Oh, wow.
That indicates that a lot of those players are doing 2 tight end builds. And so we brought this up last week. I think that more people are playing with optimizers, and I think more of the optimizers are pushing people towards 2 tight end builds. I'm still not going that route. I don't think it's a very optimal route, even in cash. Like I think you can get away with it in cash, but I'm not counting on that. Like betting on Dallas Goedert to outperform a bunch of receivers last week just doesn't feel like something I can rely on week over week. And I think it worked out for Goddard last week. But if you played, I need to look up who the other highly rostered tight end was last week, because
my guess is Otten Schultz, because Mason Taylor picked up that quad injury. So I know that killed his rostership last week.
Yes, that is accurate. So last week, you're right. It was Dalton Schultz. He was 73%, and Dallas Goedert was 41%. So most people were
73%. Wow.
73%.
In that double up?
Yes, in that double up, in that $25 double up. He only scored 4 points.
Yeah.
And like, okay, like if I was going to do that, like put Dallas Goedert in the tight end spot and get a flex receiver that's going to score you more than that. Like I don't understand this trend. I'm not buying into it. Also, for reference, like I played Colston Loveland, who got me 6.8 points and was cheaper than Dalton Schultz. So like, it's just like, I don't know. I don't understand what's going on there.
Can be made.
I think it's the optimizers just getting in the way, because these players, they do project well, but I don't think the 2 tight end build is a good strategy for DFS.
Yeah, I love everything that we offer at Football Guys. The cash DFS optimizer pushes me to 2 tight ends every time. And I'm like, no. And part of that, Austin, is we did this show for 1 year with our very good friend Kelly Singh. And Kelly Singh notoriously is the biggest tight end supporter in the NFL or in the fantasy world. And she did not win often, meaning against you, when we used to do this show. It's all love, Kelly. But Austin, we saw firsthand it's not a winning build. And so I refuse to do it as well. I had a similar head-to-head story last week. I was able to get Jonathan Taylor, but Austin, I did one of your favorite things. I galaxy brained it. And I said, how am I not going to find a way to get JT and Bijan together? And I kicked James Cook, my play of the week, out of my own lineups. Thankfully, I played him in the Club Fantasy League because I always put my money where my mouth is in this league. But I did not play him in my head-to-head, so I did still take down like 80% of my head-to-heads. I lost 1. I didn't play very many of them. But I did not cash in the double up, even with Bijan Robinson. We were probably in similar double ups. Bijan Robinson being that heavily rostered, I did not make the cash line in that one. So.
Yeah. Well, and it was a tough week. There's a lot of players that I think should have performed well that just didn't last week.
I had too much faith in Dak Prescott, plain and simple. I lost at quarterback. It's just one of those things that happens sometimes. Speaking of cash, let's get into week 9, folks. Austin, let's start off with your specialty, cash plays, top of the class. These are the higher price players, 8,000 and above. You got 2 of them for us. One we've heard very often. One is actually new to the list, I think, for at least for a while. So
yeah. So I mean, first off, like you can't go wrong with Christian McCaffrey. He's just I know last week was bad for McCaffrey, but I'm still willing to go back to him. The matchup is really good for the San Francisco 49ers this week. He is expensive, so he's up in the $8,800 range on DraftKings, $9,500 on FanDuel. So because of that price range, I do think that there are some cheap options at running back or cheaper options at running back that you can go with and be just fine. But for him, like going up against the Giants, I think it's going to play out really well. And I think the 49ers are going to get back on a roll this week. Also, Brock Purdy should be back this week. So that's also going to help the offense a little bit more. The other player that I have in this category, and this is someone that I'm a little bit more interested in playing than McCaffrey necessarily this week, and it is Jamar Chase. And I don't know that he's come up a ton on the show this year.
Yeah.
He is $8,400 on DraftKings. He is $9,700 on FanDuel. He's gotten really priced up. The thing here is he has been getting absurd volume. Like we talk about volume a lot on this game for cash players, and there have been some players getting some ridiculous volume this year. Jamar Chase has hit a new level. The past 2 weeks, he is averaging over 20 targets per game. I truly cannot recall a player since I've been playing fantasy football to get that level of volume.
It's bonkers. I updated my rest of season projections this week as I tend to do at the halfway point. He's on pace for like 220 targets this season. Again, unheard of.
Yeah, it is absolutely wild. So I also just, let's see. Yeah, Marvin Harrison holds a record for most targets in a single NFL season with 205.
Yeah.
So he's on pace to beat that record right now.
Wild.
And at that rate too, by the way, you said 220, he would be doing it without the 17th game. He'd be like hitting that close to that mark without the 17th game.
Yeah, he would hit close to 225 or 205 in game 16. Absolutely. So you'd hope he'd beat it there just so there's no naysayers. Are you concerned? Joe Flacco picked up an AC joint injury. It sounds 50-50 whether he plays. Is that just an immediate pivot if it's Jake Browning again?
I think so. I just don't trust Jake Browning in this offense. So I probably at that point will just pay down for Rashee Rice, which we'll talk about in a second anyways.
Yep. And before we move on, there is a player I have to ask about because you mentioned how long we've been doing this show and playing fantasy football. Austin, you and I have been doing this show for 3.5 years. I don't remember ever seeing a player on FanDuel hit 11,000 before. Is Jonathan Taylor officially persona non grata at that price?
I think they have finally priced him up appropriately to where it's like, I don't feel like I can do it. I don't think you need to do it, in part because I think the matchup against Pittsburgh this week is going to be really conducive to the pass game. And so I think Jonathan Taylor like probably performs well, but probably doesn't score 3 touchdowns, which is like, okay, big deal. Oh, Jonathan Taylor like sucks now because he can't score 3 touchdowns.
The only player in the NFL where the expectation is 3 touchdowns.
Right. So I'm not necessarily playing him in cash. Also because he is getting priced up to the point now where it becomes really hard to build a good lineup around him. I think he's interesting in tournaments still because people are not going to want to play him. But in cash, I think I'm going to go elsewhere.
Yeah, you have to go so risky at other spots to make him viable. It starts to get to that point that we've talked about. He's no longer covering their points because now you have to get risky at 2, maybe even 3 spots to fit him into a lineup. It's gotten out of hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Deservedly so. The guy has more touchdowns. I think I mentioned this on our show last week. If I didn't, I should have. The guy has more touchdowns than every other team, more rushing than every other team in the NFL. Every other one, just Jonathan Taylor by himself. Crazy stuff. Moving on to the bad nerds, we got the good students spending a little bit too much time on their instruments. We are talking about your mid-tier players, 6 to $8,000. Austin, obviously, if you're paying up for McCaffrey, you're paying up for Jamar Chase. You're not going to be able to fit all of these guys in your lineup, though it could get a little close.
It could get a little close. So I actually am probably not playing either of those guys this week because they are so expensive.
Yeah.
So most of the players that I have will be in the next couple of categories. The first one at quarterback, my first quarterback of the week is actually Daniel Jones. So we just talked about Jonathan Taylor. Naturally leads into the quarterback I have this week. Pittsburgh has just been not good against quarterbacks, against opposing pass games in general. They've allowed the second most points to the position on the year, and they've been giving up a solid amount of points over the past 4 weeks as well. So I feel really confident going to Daniel Jones. The offense has been really consistent there. And he's been still passing the ball. Like, it's not like we haven't seen the pass game work in Indy because Jonathan Taylor has been running his for his life, apparently, these past, 8 weeks. Daniel Jones has still been getting there despite that. So I feel really confident. And I think, it's a bit of a closer total line this week. So I could see the pass game being used a lot more heavily in this matchup.
In my theory so far for week 9, I agree with that I feel like the pivoting to the passing game can give you an edge there. And you're absolutely right. We've just seen this rejuvenation of Daniel Jones to the amazement of most of the NFL. So
what a wild time. Daniel Jones being relevant again in 2025.
Daniel Jones helming universally perceived as the best offense in the NFL is wild. So
yeah, it's truly a wild time. Next up in this category, though, I do have a running back. It is Kamani Vidal, who is at $6,300 on DraftKings, $7,700 on FanDuel. He's reasonably priced, so that's part of the reason that I'm very interested in him this week. But also, the matchup is pretty good for him going up against none other than the Houston Texans, which we have seen them get run all over multiple times so far this season. So I feel very confident in going back to the well there. And he's going to be the only kind of like viable viable running back option there. So loving that matchup for him. And then
I'm just going to interrupt real quick. I think you said the Houston Texans, but you may have meant to say the Tennessee Titans. So
I meant the Tennessee Titans.
I was like, Houston's defense is way too good. And did I hear that properly? It's definitely the Titans he's playing.
It's definitely the Titans. You're right. The Titans have allowed 28 points to running backs since week 5. So it's been a good matchup for opposing running backs. And I think that it'll continue to be so this week for Kamani Vidal.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And then at receiver, I have 2 players that I'm looking at. First off is Rashee Rice. Like, he just continues to get ridiculous volume, and he has the best game environment on the slate. That game between Kansas City and Buffalo is expected to be the highest scoring, the highest scoring game on the weekend. And Kansas City has among the highest implied team totals of the week at 27 points. So I imagine Rashee Rice is going to be heavily utilized and probably highly rostered again, especially because it's going to be hard to get up to Jamar Chase this week.
Yeah, he's just expensive.
Yeah, he is. And the other player I have is I'm subject to change. I may not actually play Chris Olave. I think he's worth a mention because he's continued to get the volume. But the fact that Tyler Shuck is coming in at quarterback makes me a little bit nervous for like, what are we going to see things shift? Is he like a different receiver? I assume things are going to still run through Chris Olave. It feels a little bit risky to go that route, but he's someone that like if he shows up in cash lineups, I'm not going to be mad about it. So it's worth the consideration that he'll continue to be pretty heavily rostered.
Absolutely. Let's keep chucking along. We call it the bookworms. We're talking the value plays, $4,000 to $6,000, easily underestimated players. Austin, you got another quarterback here for us, but I've already planted a red flag in that quarterback for you. So.
Yes. Well, so if Joe Flacco plays, I am intrigued by playing him this week, which I did not think I was going to be saying this year. It's just like he's passing the ball a ton. He's doing enough to pay off his salary. He's only at 5,500 or 5,600 on DraftKings. So he doesn't need to do that much. He needs to score 15, 16, 17 points to like comfortably be paying off his salary. And he's going to do that reliably, assuming he starts. If he doesn't start, I don't think I'm pivoting to Jake Browning. I think I just did not feel comfortable.
I won't allow you to. If you try to put Jake Browning in your DFS lineup, a picture of me pops up on your phone and says no. No.
I would love to have that feature on my phone, but I do think that I I don't think you need to go to Joe Flacco this week necessarily. I will say, if you do go with him and then he ends up getting rolled out and you want to pivot, like Brock Purdy is $100 cheaper than Joe Flacco and would be a totally fine pivot in my mind. And it may end up being the primary cash quarterback. If we confirm that he's going to actually play this week.
Austin, I love your next player. I've been a big fan since he came into the league. He's one of my guys where I feel like I quote unquote discovered him because I knew who he was when other people didn't. However, obviously he's coming into a very tumultuous environment after the starting running back goes down. So
yeah, Tyrone Tracy. This is kind of like playing just like the backup running back game where it's like he's cheap. He's $5,100.
He feels like a free square kind of this week. So
yeah, and I could see him getting really heavily rostered just because it's like it enables you to be able to pay up for guys like Jamar Chase. Like the lineup I'll announce later on, I have both Jamar Chase and Rashee Rice in my lineup right now. And it's because I am saving money at running back with Tyrone Tracy. So that's really the idea here is like it's helping you get to other guys. And if other people are going to play him, like it's just going to cancel out and be totally fine. I also don't think he doesn't have to do that much. The thing is, like, I do worry that Devin Singletary gets a decent amount of run. When we did our Look Inside series before the season, like that was the main thing I was looking at, is trying to figure out like to what extent I thought Tracy was going to continue at the pace he was after Singletary got hurt versus how much Singletary would come back and play at the snap share that he was to start the season. Well, it ended up not mattering because Tracy got hurt and then Scotabo got hurt. And so now it's like, okay, it's all kind of up in the air, but it does seem like Tracy will get most of the touches in the running back room. So I like going with him at the cheap price this week so that I can pay up for some of those other players.
I always just cross my fingers. Tyrone Tracy is one of those guys, a converted wide receiver, yet I almost said the Bills. The Giants refuse to throw the football to him. I just hope one of these weeks we see a 10-target Tyrone Tracy, say that 5 times fast, week where he just kind of shows us what he can do there. And maybe this will be the week you would figure that the 49ers will be coming out for revenge. The Giants should be playing from behind. That's a nice game environment for a running back who can catch the football.
Yeah, for sure. So I really like Tracy in that matchup. A couple of receivers in this price range. First off, Michael Pittman. I mean, to the point earlier about like pivoting to the pass game, it's not even just like needing to pivot. Like Michael Pittman has just been getting a ton of volume.
Just good.
Yeah, and is also just good. Like he's a typical like cash consideration. We haven't like gone his direction as much this year, but the past 2 weeks he's had 9 targets in each game. And they've been ahead in those matchups. I don't expect them to be as far ahead this week as they have been the past 2 games. So even more reason for him to be heavily utilized in this matchup. The other receiver that I'm intrigued by this week, and he'll come up later in the show as well, is DK Metcalf at $5,500 on DraftKings. Again, we've talked about this in previous weeks. The one weakness of the Indianapolis Colts is their secondary, and they are a little bit of a pass funnel on defense. They've allowed several receivers to get there. And so DK Metcalf is someone that I am interested in, also because I think this will be back and forth enough that he'll get there on volume and Aaron Rodgers will be feeding him the ball.
Yeah, they just have no other wide receivers there. If he's not throwing to a tight end, he's throwing to DK Metcalf.
Yeah, accurate. The last player I have for this section is our first tight end of the show. It's Brock Bowers at $5K on DraftKings, $6,800 on FanDuel. Part of the reason I wanted to bring up Brock Bowers here is a little bit about him specifically, but it's also about the tight end context this week in general. There are a lot of really good, expensive tight ends this week. And when I say expensive, like they're in the like 5K to 6K range. So they're not like unreasonably priced. We're not getting like the old days where you'd have Travis Kelce at 7K and you'd play him anyways. But Tucker Kraft, Tyler Warren, Rondé Gatson, Brock Bowers are all 5K plus. And I think all 4 of them are really good plays. I think all 4 of them can get there really easily. To me, the question, one of the like pivot points and questions you're going to be asking yourself in cash this week is, do I pay up for tight end and not play 2 of Jamar Chase, Christian McCaffrey, and Rashee Rice?
Yeah.
Or do I punt at tight end? And I think there is a good argument for paying up at tight end, because there is a world with these 4 tight ends that I could see if one of them gets really heavily rostered, that you get buried by them because of the amount of volume that we should expect from them. So I'm going to talk about another tight end in a second, but I really like paying up I would say I probably won't pay up at tight end this week based on how I'm currently putting my lineup, but I totally understand feeling the need to do it.
And I do, more on that later. But what I did find interesting, Austin, when I was looking at this, and we always get into the weeds a little bit with the pricing, FanDuel brings Bowers back as the number one priced tight end. DraftKings, he's like fourth, if I remember correctly. Yeah. Like, they did not show him any respect. And in my opinion, Bowers is more valuable on DraftKings than he is on FanDuel. So I found that very interesting.
Yes, I agree with that. And I feel like that's part of the reason that I'm inclined to like go his direction as well. It's also a decent matchup for him.
Yeah.
Even since week 5, it's even better for him. So the Jacksonville Jaguars have allowed the 6th most points to tight ends since week 6, averaging 19 points to the position. The issue though is that the Pittsburgh Steelers have allowed 25 points per game to tight ends in that same time. So Tyler Warren has a great matchup. And oh, by the way, Rondé Gatson is getting ridiculous volume, and we know Tucker Kraft is also getting ridiculous volume over and over again. So it's just like any of these 4 guys, I think, could really pop off this week.
I think that makes sense. Let's wrap cash up with the pump plays. We're talking sub $4,000 players. We call them C's, get degrees. Austin, you have that pivot tight end you were talking about.
Yeah. So if you want to be able to pay up for 2 of those 3 players I mentioned earlier, between McCaffrey, Chase, and Rashee Rice, I think you do want to look towards Colston Loveland again this week, who is $3,300 on DraftKings, $4,800 on FanDuel. Obviously, if Cole Kmet sits, like, don't do this. But it seems like I think there's good reason to believe that Cole Kmet is going to be out again for another week. And so Colston Loveland, like, he's not going to get a ton of volume, but he's going to get enough volume to warrant playing him. Also, the matchup, like last week, it was like purely a salary move for Loveland. This week, the matchup is kind of like wildly good. Since week 5, the Cincinnati Bengals have allowed 28 points per game to the tight end position. I don't understand how you allow that many points to
it's like, are you just not playing safeties? Like, you've decided against them?
So it's just a really good matchup. And again, it enables me to play Tyrone Tracy and Rashee Rice. And if I wanted to do Christian McCaffrey instead of one of those 2, I could. So I really like being able to do that. Love going towards Loveland this week. At defense, I'm really only looking at one defense in cash right now. It's the Houston Texans. Denver's offense is pretty good, but the Houston Texans defense has been really freaking good, and they're cheap. They're $2,900 on DraftKings, $39 on FanDuel. I don't need them to do that much. We talk about this all the time. In cash, like, if they score me 4 or 5 points, great. I don't have any concern that they're going to goose egg against the Denver Broncos.
Yeah, I also like Houston this week, and I'll jump a little bit in my notes. We just saw Houston shut down San Francisco. If they can shut down San Francisco, they can shut down Denver. And let's not forget, 1, this game is not in Denver. And 2, we saw this Denver team for 3 quarters be terrible against the Giants. So those were my notes for later on in the show. I'll give them to you now. I love this pick. Full endorsement here. As we wrap up the cash section, we are moving on to GPP, but I will remind you, you can play with us. You'll find links in the description of this video to join us on FanDuel or DraftKings for some $2 contest over there. Also, join the Discord, hit subscribe, hit follow if you're on Spotify or Apple. We'd very much appreciate it. As we move on, we do this section by position. Austin, get us started when we are looking at the GPP and the tournaments, the quarterbacks you like this week.
Yeah, so I had a hard time like landing on just one quarterback this week.
Yeah, this is the biggest I've ever seen this section for you.
So the reason is, like, you can't go wrong with Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes.
No.
Like, that matchup is going to project really well, and I think you should have exposure to that game and probably to both quarterbacks. But the way I tend to think about this is, what matchups are people going to overlook that we should think about otherwise? And so I started thinking about, first off, the San Francisco 49ers playing the New York Giants. The New York Giants have been awful against quarterbacks over the past 4 weeks. They've allowed over 27 points per game. They are the best matchup for quarterbacks right now since week 5. And so for me, like, one clear option is play whoever the starting San Francisco 49ers quarterback is. If it's Brock Purdy, great. If it's Mac Jones, cool. I don't care. They're close enough in pricing too, where it's like, well, I should say on DraftKings, they're close enough in pricing where it's not going to be that big of a difference to get between the two of them. They're only $500 different. On FanDuel, they're the exact same price.
Yeah.
So you can pick and pivot as easily as it gets. So
yeah, what I like is build with Purdy, and then if you end up with that extra 500, upgrade your defense or something or another position.
Yes.
So
yeah, no, I like something like that. The other player that I wanted to note here is primarily a large field consideration. I wouldn't be doing this in like 100 in those 100-person contests on DraftKings. Like if I'm getting into the thousands of contests and I'm interested in this, or if I'm in multi-entry contests, I'm more interested in this.
Yeah.
I'm very intrigued by Aaron Rodgers this week. He's going up against the Indianapolis Colts. We've mentioned this game already. The Indy-Pittsburgh game is one of the higher over-unders in the game, but it's still getting overlooked by Kansas City, Buffalo, and Cincinnati, Chicago. And so for me, I'm looking at this as a potential back and forth matchup. It's only a 3-point spread. And I mentioned it earlier, like Indy hasn't been great against, or they've seemed decent against quarterbacks so far this year. But here's the thing. So far this year, they've played Tua Tagovailoa, Bo Nix, Cam Ward twice, Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith, Jacoby Brissett, and Justin Herbert. Like most of the quarterbacks have played are not scaring you. And the ones, there are 3 of them hit 300 plus yards. Matthew Stafford, Jacoby Brissett, weirdly, and Justin Herbert. I feel like Aaron Rodgers is more in that category than he is the Cam Ward Tua Tagovailoa category, regardless of how he has regressed a little bit as he's aged. And so to me, I feel like this is a sneaky week where Aaron Rodgers could throw for 300 yards, throw for 3 or 4 touchdowns, and suddenly like he's really boosting you up the board.
Yeah, I'm also looking at a game I think might be overlooked mainly because people are afraid of the other team. And what I mean afraid is I don't think they see a chance of this game staying close. And that is I'm taking Jared Goff against the Minnesota Vikings. The concern here being JJ McCarthy comes back, and can Minnesota keep this a game? I don't think that it's going to matter that much. You get Jared Goff at home coming off of a bye against the Minnesota Vikings, who have just been killed by quarterbacks in each of the last 2 weeks. Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts both dropped 3 touchdowns on them. I like this matchup for Goff. It's a divisional matchup. I think you could see, even if this is a game that gets away, you could see Goff go into halftime with 3 touchdowns and then just run the clock out in the second half. So I'm not overly concerned here. I don't know how right I'll be on whether it's going to be highly rostered or overlooked. I just know when I mentioned last night on our show that I thought Minnesota could keep this a game, I almost got laughed off of the show. But the fact of the matter is Detroit's secondary is awful, and you still have Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson on the other side. So I do think there could be some game environment here that leads to Jared Goff throwing in the second half of this game.
Yeah, well, I see that, and like we've even seen games where Detroit rolls and they're scoring like 40 points and are way ahead.
Just keep throwing the ball,
and they just keep throwing the ball anyways. Like they play a fairly aggressive style of football even when they're leading, and so I could see it happening even if they are very much ahead. It's also one of those things where like Jahmyr Gibbs could score a couple of receiving touchdowns. Like he's utilized enough in the pass game, it can work out that way. So I like the call of Jared Goff, especially because it's a divisional matchup too. Like I feel like this is the type of situation where Dan Campbell especially would like to assert his dominance and be like, you know what? Yeah, we'll rub your nose in it. We'll be 20, 30 points ahead and keep the foot on the gas pedal.
Austin, you got 3 running backs for me as we move on to that position.
Yeah, so I was trying to think about how to attack the Cincinnati Chicago game because I do think it's going to be an interesting one to go after. I will say I almost went back to Caleb Williams for you this week because I know how much you love playing him in your DFS lineups. I probably will play him in a couple of lineups, but I do think the probably the better way to go about this matchup is to play the running attack on the Chicago side. And so DeAndre Swift, assuming he still plays, he keeps playing through injury. And so I think he's going to continue to play. If not, obviously like play Kyle Monangai, and I will be playing him in cash at that point as well. But otherwise, DeAndre Swift at a tournament spot to get access to that game. I mean, Cincinnati's just been atrocious against running backs. They're giving up the most points to the position since week 5. Really easy to go that route.
Yeah, if Swift misses, it's almost, I don't want to, this is going to sound terrible. It's almost a savior for cash lineups because then you get that true free square of Kyle Monangai taking on the Cincinnati Bengals. So,
yeah, I would not mind that because the cash, I feel like there's a lot of different directions to go in cash this week. But if Swift sits, it gets very clear of how to do this.
If Swift sits, all of a sudden Jonathan Taylor comes into play again, even at 11,000 on FanDuel.
Yeah, that you're not wrong about that. So I also, in this portion, I want to just name Christian McCaffrey again. Like, I think people are going to feel burned by last week and not want to play him because we were just like, what the heck happened to Christian McCaffrey? And I think you could play him with either Mac Jones and Brock Purdy or not. Like, he can totally get there and his quarterback get there. We've seen that happen plenty of times with the 49ers. So just to say, like, consider him in your tournament pools. Also, people don't like to pay up for plays. They don't like to pay up and then have to figure out where to figure it out elsewhere in their lineup. So I think it's a good salary move. I'm a little bit nervous about this pick. I was really debating whether or not
the matchup's great
for this. The matchup is great. Tony Pollard is very intriguing to me this week at $5,300 on DraftKings, only $5,500 on FanDuel, which makes me actually more interested in him on FanDuel, even though he's a little bit more of a pass catching back traditionally. Like if he scores a touchdown or two, like suddenly like he's doing really well on FanDuel. He's going up against the Los Angeles Chargers, who have allowed the 5th most points to running backs since week 5. So again, the matchup's been really good, and we've seen that the Chargers have kind of returned to that run funnel thing that we saw happen under Brandon Staley. Apparently, they can't just evade that problem. So I really like going towards Tony Pollard, or you could even go Tajay Spears. I don't care about which one you pick. I feel like it's 50-50 either way, but I lean towards Pollard because I think he's still the number one running back in that running back room.
Yeah, I'm going to pick that same game and go across the street and go Kamani Vidal. It's the same sort of like method that led me to James Cook last week. And that is bell cow running back in a spot where they can score multiple touchdowns. And the Tennessee Titans give up a ton of touchdowns, as you've already brought up. When I was looking the stats up for this, when I was talking about it yesterday, he has, if I remember correctly, 50 carries to the rest of the running backs, 20 carries since in his 3 starts. He has 20 targets, maybe 10 targets to the rest of the running backs, 3 targets. This is his backfield. But my favorite thing that I found while researching this, Tennessee has given up a running back touchdown in every game this season. You throw in the fact that this is likely a blowout by the Los Angeles Chargers. We should see Kamani Vidal the whole third and possibly some of the fourth quarter. I think he eats up in this matchup.
I still cannot believe that they are continuing to give up a touchdown in every single game.
Yeah, that's a wild one. It was not one I expected to come across. Another fun one, Detroit has given up a wide receiver touchdown in every game they've played, except when they played the Cleveland Browns, which is no surprise whatsoever. So.
That's incredible. But no, with Kamani Vidal, I did also look at him as a tournament consideration, so I think it's a totally good call on your part.
Yeah, the way I've been picking these is just I want the guys with multi-touchdown upside that I can afford that aren't $11,000, and Kamani Vidal seems to fit that bill for me this week, Austin, as we move on to the wide receivers, some repeat names from before, and then some new names for us.
Yeah, so I mentioned DK Metcalf earlier. I don't think people are going to click the button for him a lot because he's not really an interesting pick. I don't think people are really like excited to pick players for the Pittsburgh Steelers in general right now.
Yeah.
And so while I think he's safe enough to play in cash, in tournaments, I think he's going to also be lowly rostered. And again, if I'm playing Aaron Rodgers as my quarterback in a large field, I'm going to stack him with DK Metcalf. I mean, frankly, with Rodgers, you could try and double stack him, but I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to just keep it simple with him this week, have DK Metcalf there, and then I'll have a bring back for that game later. But another receiver already mentioned in this show is Jamar Chase. Like, I think he is very much GPP viable this week. He has the upside there. I think what's interesting about how he's been doing so far these past couple of weeks is he's been getting a ton of targets, but he actually his last game he had 19 targets but didn't score a touchdown. And so it was
wild.
It was wild. And it felt like he quote unquote dudded in some ways, like he didn't get there. It was, and the reason I say that is because I pulled up my cash lineup last week to check percentages after game started to see like, oh, how did I do in like picking players that everybody else did. And I was like, oh, everybody played Jamar Chase and I didn't. I hope that doesn't come back to bite me in the butt. And it didn't.
And it didn't. So clearly that was a dud.
It's so in my mind, I was like, well, he didn't get there. He didn't get you there necessarily, but he can, right?
Yeah.
Any week. And if he gets 10 plus catches and a touchdown or two, like he's going to break the slate. So it's just to say he has the potential to do that any week. You should look at him in your lineups. It's the same conversation we've had with Jonathan Taylor in recent weeks.
100%.
So I mentioned the San Francisco game earlier and looking at either Brock Purdy or Mike Jones, whoever starts. If I stack with them, I like going towards Juwan Jennings as a good stacking partner, especially if Ricky Pearsall sits this week. But Juwan Jennings, he has had 7 targets in both of the past 2 games. We've seen him have those pop ceiling games, and so that's part of the reason I like going towards him. And last week was maybe a down week for him, but again, it was the Houston Texans. I think it's going to be a much better situation for him this week against the New York Giants. So totally fine to go that way. On the other side of that game, I was trying to figure out how to have a bring back if I were to play a San Francisco Giants matchup. And I think my best situation for that right now is Wan'Dale Robinson, because I think he gets enough volume that he can still get there. And if he scores a touchdown or 2, like you're set and golden. And this game, I could see it being a little bit back and forth. I don't think it's going to be like hitting the over necessarily and like scoring like 50 plus points, but I could see there being enough pass volume in this game, particularly on the New York Giants side, to get Wan'Dale Robinson there.
Well, yeah, because you saw against Houston last week, all of these second string wide receivers for Houston, Xavier Hutchin, Jaden Higgins, and Jalen Noel, all went off last week. Yeah. If they can do it, you'd like to believe Wan'Dale Robinson could do it as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a pretty good matchup there for Wan'Dale Robinson.
Yep. And then I'm kind of going with the strategy. I promise you, Austin and I do not collaborate when we do this whatsoever, but we obviously read the tea leaves the same this week, because I am looking to leverage the Jonathan Taylor plays, or maybe the Jonathan Taylor no plays. And I think this is a great matchup for Michael Pittman, as Austin mentioned earlier in the show. Pittman can still hit while JT is doing what he's doing. And if JT takes a step back, it's great. Pittsburgh has also been killed by wide receiver ones this season. They gave up 40 points to Jamar Chase, 25 points to Justin Jefferson, 21 points to Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Garrett Wilson scored 22 on them. Do not get it twisted. Michael Pittman is the wide receiver 1 on this team by a long shot. Austin, I think 20 plus is certainly in the cards for him this week.
Yeah, I definitely was looking towards the Michael Pittman route. I mean, I think you could, I mentioned Aaron Rodgers in large field contests. I think you could play Daniel Jones stacks as well very easily in those small field contests. I feel like I think this game will be looked at a decent amount, but I think there's going to be so much energy taken up by Kansas City, Buffalo, that games like this are going to be really good ways to get different. I think like playing any of the receivers is good for GPP. Like I could see you double stacking with Daniel Jones and having Michael Pittman and either Alec Pierce and Josh Downs. I do think it's hard for me to see like a situation where Downs and Pierce both hit, because then you're counting on Pittman and Tyler Warren to fail.
Yeah.
But I do think sprinkling in either of those 2 guys is a good way to get different in larger field contests.
Well, and to go that exact route, I think it's pretty affordable to go with the logistical double stack as we move on to tight end, which would be Daniel Jones, Michael Pittman, and your guy Tyler Warren.
Yeah, exactly. And I love, again, the matchup from Tyler Warren. I've already alluded to it earlier in this show. Like it's really ridiculous matchup for Tyler Warren going up against going this week. He's got a really good matchup. He's at $5,500 on DraftKings. So again, really easy to get there, especially if you're stacking him with Daniel Jones. But you know, even if you're doing it on the bring back with Aaron Rodgers on the other side of the ball, like Pittsburgh has allowed 25 points per game to tight end since week 5. It's just it's going to be easy to fit there. I could start throwing out stats about the fact that Pittsburgh has given up the 3rd most points to the tight end position since week 3 since week 5. And so
I love that all these bad tight end defenses are all playing each other this week.
I know, right? So you could play a 2 tight end build. No, don't do that. Just play Tyler Warren and get out of there. It's going to be a good matchup for him. And I think the game script environment will be there to keep him involved throughout the game.
Yeah, as we alluded to earlier in the show, I love Brock Bowers this week, but I like him more on DraftKings. So I'm kind of giving you my FanDuel pivot because he is cheaper than Warren and Bowers, and that is Tucker Kraft. And this just feels like a mistake on FanDuel's part. Tucker Kraft, touchdown-wise, might be the best tight end in fantasy right now, and he's not the most expensive on the FanDuel slate. That's a week where I'm going to pay up at tight end. And as Austin alluded to, again, I found it hilarious, Austin. We do not collaborate. I wrote in my notes, this seems like a week to pay up. And then you started the show saying this seems like a week to pay up. He being Tucker Kraft killed Pittsburgh last week. And then he gets another great matchup this week. Carolina Panthers are giving up 8th most points to tight ends on the season. This just feels like another Tucker Kraft week where first of all, the Carolina Panthers have been weirdly good against wide receivers this year and terrible against tight ends. And then you get a Green Bay team that kind of doesn't utilize their wide receivers as their alpha. It truly seems to be Tucker Kraft this week. If I'm looking to put money on a tight end to score a touchdown this week, it's Tucker Kraft.
Yeah, I have played 2 Green Bay showdown contests this year because they've been in prime time a couple of times this year. And on both occasions, I said, should I play Tucker Kraft as the captain? And I thought to myself, tight ends, they really don't often hit the optimal captain. It's not a really good strategy to play. I should pivot and go towards Josh Jacobs or some player on the other team. And both times, Tucker Kraft won somebody that contest. And I was like, okay,
should have did it.
Tucker Kraft is effectively a wide receiver for the purposes of this offense.
And Austin, we can't finish up a lineup without a defense. And I literally had these guys typed out and decided against it. They are probably my second or third favorite defense when it comes to pricing. Still one of the top 5 defenses in fantasy football right now. So.
Yeah, it's really wild, but it comes down to the fact that, despite the fact that they had an awful week last week, they've been able to force touchdowns.
We're talking about the Jacksonville Jaguars, by the way, folks.
So. Oh, yeah, sorry.
No, that's me. Sometimes I lead in, and then 99 times out of 100, you catch that I was kind of setting you up to say the name. This time it didn't happen. So.
Yeah, can you tell we're doing this a little bit late at night?
I promise you, I am falling asleep. I am an old man, and it is 10:30, which I know is laughable for our audience, but regardless. So.
Yeah, I wake up at 6, y'all. Like, this is rough for me. Okay, so the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're $3,300 on DraftKings, $4,100 on FanDuel. They have just been getting there by forcing turnovers, being really disruptive on defense. It's also, they're playing the Las Vegas Raiders. The Raiders are getting Bowers back, so I do think that helps them get their offense back on track a little bit, but that offensive line has been really bad. And so I can easily see the Jaguars getting a couple of sacks, and also Geno Smith is known to make mistakes. Even when he has played his best ball, we have seen him still put the ball in harm's way and force turnovers. And so I could see that very easily happening in this matchup. I'm most likely to play your defense in reality, but as a way to get different, I think the Jaguars, they could go overlooked this week, and they would be, I think they do have the good upside.
Yeah. So the one thing I'll quickly throw out is I've mentioned to you, and it worked last week with James Cook and Buffalo. I like good running back, good defense stacks. If you can somehow afford the Chargers when you're done building your lineup, start with a cheap defense. But if you have money left over, you have nowhere better to spend it on the Chargers. But if you want to just stay cheap, which is what you should do, trust me, we've been talking about this for a while now. Go with Austin's pick of the Houston Texans. I've already given you all the reasons, but the fact of the matter is they're probably the best actual defense in the NFL, and Denver shouldn't scare you the way it seems they're going to probably scare people. The Texans are very safe, and I still think there's upside. Not a whole lot to add there. So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
All right, folks, that wraps up the show. However, Austin and I do a little contest every single week. We call it the Valedictorian Shootout, where we each build a lineup based on DraftKings scoring. And Austin had ended my winning streak, but I've started my next winning streak with a whopping 153-110 victory this past week. Austin, you gambled at running back. You knew you gambled at running back. It did not pay off. My only bad spot was Dak Prescott on the lineup that I gave on this show. So I think my lineup on this show for the first time in a long time was better than the lineup I actually put out into the world. So once again, I galaxy brained the hell out of last week. So that was a problem. As we move into the week 9 lineups, I think we've talked about most players on my team, or at least most game environments. I'm going with Jared Goff. I'm going with Kamani Vidal. I wanted a part of that Jacksonville game, and I started with Travis Hunter, but I decided not to go that route. So I'm going Travis Etienne. I wanted to stack with Goff, and Austin, I landed for me and you on Amon-Ra St. Brown. I will tell you, I did not like how that kind of shook out my entire life. I mean, there's one player I'm not in love with for a cash game, which is kind of what we're playing. So I think for GPP, I would pivot this to JMO or Gibbs or JMO and Gibbs. But against you, I'm going Amon-Ra St. Brown. So just to get back on track here. Goff, Vidal, Travis Etienne, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Michael Pittman, DK Metcalf. I went with Keon Coleman as my fourth wide receiver. Austin pointed out that's a great game environment, Kansas City, Buffalo. And Austin, I'm just thinking that was the game where we saw Gabe Davis score 4 touchdowns. And while he's not Gabe Davis, Keon Coleman is kind of in that role for Buffalo now. So I'd be interested to see if maybe he can find the end zone multiple times this week. Brock Bowers at my tight end again. Bowers is cheaper on DraftKings, and that's what we're building here in the Houston defense. Austin, as I'm seeing you put your lineup in, we have quite a few players in common this week.
We do have quite a few players in common, but we do have the dynamic where you paid up a tight end and I did not. So we'll get to see exactly how that plays out. So I'm going with Daniel Jones at quarterback at this point at $6,200 on DraftKings. I've got a 2 running back build going also with Kamani Vidal, but I have Tyrone Tracy at $5,100. And so my 4 receivers, I have Jamar Chase and Rashee Rice. I alluded to be able to getting both of those guys in my lineup earlier. Happy to make it work out. I also have Michael Pittman. And to get to both Chase and Rice, I am punting at receiver with Chamari Dyke for the Tennessee Titans at $3,900. That is assuming for actual cash games for when we play. If
you need Calvin Ridley to be out.
Yes, if Calvin Ridley plays, I feel less certain about this. But if Calvin Ridley's out, I'm keeping it there. At tight end, I have Colston Loveland, as I mentioned earlier, and then I also have the Houston Texans defense.
One thing that's hilarious, and obviously DK is a new player, Shamiri DK. You didn't know how to pronounce the name, and that's absolutely fine. But I have DK Metcalf, and you have Shamiri DK. So, like, we have DKs on the same team against each other. So, again, more in common between our 2 lineups than you would even think there were, even just on name pronunciation. As we mentioned, you can play tournaments with us. Links in the description of this video. Last week, first time I've seen this name in a while, our Blanier or Blanier, 154 points, takes down the DraftKings contest. That is his 4th win all time against us, or hers, their 4th win all time. And Austin takes down the FanDuel contest after I took it down last week or the week before. I tell you guys this every week. It's not like we win all the time, but Austin, congratulations. Hilariously, Austin, I think you'll agree with me here, a wildly low score to take down that contest. 125.24 threw me off a little bit.
So. Yeah, it was, one of those things where it's just like, you just get lucky that everybody did worse than you.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't fill up very much last week either. I think we had 5 players in the FanDuel. So everybody who listens to this show, and I have to say, and Austin and I have talked about this, our listener numbers are way up this season. We very much appreciate it. We love talking DFS with each other, but we hope you guys are enjoying it as well. Jump into these contests. We have 5 and 6 people sometimes. Come win $12, win $6. Talk with us a little bit. I promise you'll have fun. It's a $2 contest. If DraftKings and FanDuel are legal in your state, jump in with Club Fantasy. You'll have a great time. Austin, remind everybody about the DFS content you put out here at Club Fantasy.
Yeah, well, and also if we start filling up the contest, we can put out more contests and you can potentially win more money. So, come fill those contests, but don't forget, you can catch us here every Friday for breaking down the main slate of every week for the DFS Academy. On Thursdays, Josh Hudson and I break down the Thursday night showdown slate. We're doing that all throughout the season. We're getting close to Thanksgiving. It's like on my radar now. I want to do a Thanksgiving show as well as part of this, do the 3 games for that. So be on the lookout for that. Aside from that, make sure you join the Discord. Again, the link for that's in the show description. Come talk DFS with us. We'll help you set lineups. You can see what lineups we're building, how we're thinking about it throughout the week, and also just join the community and have other people to gamble responsibly with.
Yeah, you'll find some DFS articles on the website when I remember to publish them. You will find Austin and I's rankings on the website. You can find all of that at clubfantasyffl.com. Again, if you like what you're hearing, hit that like button. If you want to hear it again next week, hit that subscribe button. If you happen to be listening on Apple or Spotify, hit that follow button. We appreciate each and every one of you folks for tuning in. Hope you guys have a wonderful week. Good luck building those lineups. We'll see you in week 10.